Now that we have our optical illusion drawn out, we are going to use shading to create the actual illusion. And I know you can still see an illusion in this, but when we add the value, the illusion will become more apparent. So if you remember the value lesson that we did, we started with white and we went all the way to black. So we're going to do the same thing in each of these squares. And first, just like that first little activity we did, we're going to start blocking in color or value. So we're going to start and we're going to fill in each of our squares with a light value. So just with your pencil, with the side of your pencil, just very lightly start adding in a very light value. And it doesn't have to be really, really close to white because we will erase as we get to, as we're finishing, we will start to erase some of the color that we add. And if you get a little bit of value past your lines, that's okay as well because we will come back in and clean that up with our eraser. So we're just going to add a very light value all the way across our square. And we want it to be as even as we can make it. Sometimes it's a little tricky getting it even, but just do the best that you can because like I said before, we can get in. We will go back in later and slowly erase some of that pencil. So I have my first one shaded in very lightly. You are going to continue to do that, and so am I, in each of our squares. We're just doing light value first. Once we've finished with our light value, we're going to go in and start adding our block of medium value. And we're going to do this right on our lines. So if you see here, each of our lines that we've drawn is going to end up being our darkest value, or the black. So we're going to come in each of our squares at our line and start adding in our medium value. So in this square, our medium value, and I'm going to do my pencil, I'm going to do my shading in different directions. So this direction I'm going to do this way. On this, from this corner, I'm going to start adding in my medium value here in this direction from my line. So I'm going to stay right on my line and start blocking in that medium value all along my line until I get to about there. So one direction, adding in that medium value. I'm going to add it up a little bit more. And remember, we're going to come back in and erase and blend in like we did in the second project that we did. So just block in your medium value right now, right against that line. So now I have my medium value blocked in, and I've only done it in that direction. So now I'm going to come in and I'm going to change the direction of my my lines, my value. I'm going to turn my paper this way, and I'm going to use my pencil and value and create the value going in this way. This will help with the illusion once we get to the darker part. And you'll see what I mean once we get there. So staying along the line, just like I did, I'm going to add in my medium value. And try to match the same width and distance from your center point. So there's box one, and we may end up going a little bit darker with this, but for now that should be okay. So now we're going to move on to this one, and this one we're going to start on this side of the line, and we're going to do our medium value, and we're going to do it this direction. So we're going to start in our corner and work along that line, adding our medium value just like we did on the other one. About like that. So now we have medium value on that side. On the middle, we're going to come and we're going to do our medium value in this direction. We're going to bring our medium value down, making sure we're touching that line with it. And we're going to stop, see where I stopped on this side? We're going to stop our medium value about right there, trying to make it even as we work our way down, so we have a nice smooth even color or value. Okay, now we're going to come to this side and we're going to do our lines this direction. So our shading is going to be this way from that center, from that line and up. And we're going to add our medium value. And just like we did on the other side, trying to match it. It might be a little different, and that's okay because we'll erase to make it more even once we're done adding all of our medium value. So now we're going to move to this one. And just like this one, we're going to do our value. And we're going to start on this side, and this value is going to go in towards the center. So our lines are going to go that direction. When you're doing this, just make sure you're turning your paper the same way that I have it with, we're working left to right from inside of each square out, adding our medium value, touching that line, spreading it up and along the line, keeping our pencil going in the same direction all the way down. Trying to match the shape of this block of medium value to the shape of that medium value. And if it's a little off, we will erase once we're done. So now we're going to turn our paper and we're going to do this one this direction, starting in that point, pulling our value down from the corner, up from that center line, trying to match this shape and value with this side. With optical illusions, consistency is helpful. So there's our block of medium value in this one. It's about the same as on this side. Now we're going to start on this one. And with this one, I'm going to do, so this line went across this way, this one went up this way, and that went up this way. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to turn it facing me, and I'm going to start in the middle and add my value from that center line coming down all the way to the edges, all the way to our lines, to those corners. Down to about here. And we'll smooth it out. Then this value is going to come from here, this direction, from the corner down the corner, the center line, that line, and out. We're going to do the same thing this direction. So from this corner, and I'm getting a little bit darker. That's okay though, because we will blend it in just a little bit. So there's my medium value. Now the center, we're going to have medium value from each line. I mean, it's going to be pretty much down. So we're going to start and we're going to go this way on this one, just like this. So this is going to match this direction. And we're going to come down with our medium value from line to line. And pull it down from center to about there. And then we're going to rotate and we're going to come this way. It's going to match the direction of this side. We're putting our value on this one from the center to the same place we ended on that side. Okay. And then we're going to rotate and we're going to pull it down, because this one is going to be coming this direction. The value in this one is going to come from here. So we're going to do the same thing in this one, from the center down, trying to keep it the same consistency and value. And it may vary a little bit, and we can fix that and work on that with our eraser in just a little bit. So then we're going to rotate and pull it this way, and this is going to match this one. Again, keeping our value consistent as we can. Coming down to the same length. Okay, so there's our center square with our medium value. Now we're going to move to this one and do our medium value. And again, if you get it a little bit outside of the line, that's okay, because we will come back in and fix that. So we're going to add our medium value in this way from that line, pulling it down. And then this one, we're going to go this direction on this side. So we're staying consistent with the way that our lines are on each section. Pulling from the corner out, from this line up. Trying to keep that consistent across that section, because we're going to go back in and add the darker value once we're done adding the medium value. So now we're going to come to this side and we're going to do the same thing from the corner this direction, trying to keep it consistent with this side. And you can already start to see the illusion happening as we're adding the value to each section. It already looks like you can walk into that. And as we add our last dark color value and then we start to blend, you'll notice it even more, and it'll become stronger and stronger as we build. So that's part of the shading, and part of creating this illusion is building from light to dark. So now we're going to move to this corner And this corner, we are going to turn our paper towards us this way, and we're going to shade from this corner up this direction, following that diagonal line. Trying to keep it about the same all the way across. Now we're going to rotate it this way, and our lines are going to go this way. Starting in the corner, coming down, starting in that diagonal line, pulling up, all the way until it meets where we stopped there. Now we're going to rotate this one, and we're going to pull this the same way we did here, starting on that edge, coming down with our medium value, going from line to line. Till we get to there. Okay, now we're going to come to this corner, and we're going to do the same thing we've done. Medium value, trying to make it consistent. Starting in the corner, working our way out from the diagonal out, up. And it is a little bit different. I know it's a little bit darker than this side, and we'll fix that as we go. Shading is all about adding layers. Okay. Now we're going to come to this side and do our motion this direction. Okay, we've got one more square to go, and then we'll start adding our dark value. So here, we're going to turn our paper this way, and we're going to come out of this corner like this. It's easier to shade when our pencil is on its like sideways like this. As we start to rub down that graphite and make a flat spot, it makes shading a little bit easier because you don't have the pointed, the point making those thin, darker lines. I'm pulling it down about right there. Then we're going to turn and go this way from the corner out. And now we are done with our medium value. Yours should look very similar to this. Yours might be a little bit darker in some areas, and we'll work on blending that once we add our darkest value. So now if you notice on here, we have the black, the darkest points in our edges. So we're going to slowly start adding the dark. I'm going to start with this block, and I'm going to go as dark as I can right along that edge. If you want to get your ruler and line your ruler up with that line, that way you can go with your pencil and just bear down and go dark all the way. You can. That way you have a nice clean edge. And then from there, you're just going to darken all of that section from this diagonal to that diagonal. And take your time with this. Don't rush. Adding in the darker is a little bit Takes a little bit more time than the medium because you have to press down a little bit and it doesn't erase as easy, so you want to go slow to build that up so you're not having to erase big dark chunks of color that won't go away fully if you need to. So that's about all the dark that I'm going to add right now. And then I'm going to come to this side, and remember we went this direction on this one, so I'm going to do the same thing and be easy on that corner. Try not to go too much over the line, but your darkest part wants to be right up against that line. And it's just going to go along that line. And we'll come back in and blend it, but we're just adding the blocks of darkness right now. The darkest part. And then we'll come back in and we'll blend and do the smoothing like we did on that second activity we did. Instead of the blocks of color, we smoothed it all out. And I'm going to turn to this side. And I'm going to do the same thing, starting in that corner where my darkest value is going to be. And just from the diagonal, making it as dark as I can right on that diagonal. Adding a little bit more darkness along this line, trying to match it to that side. Okay, so that's this section. And I'm going to show you how to do one corner and then your center. And then I'm going to let you finish adding the dark by yourself. So I'll do one corner and one to show you which directions to go with your pencil. So for this one, we're going to start in the corner, adding our dark, and right along that center diagonal is where it's going to be the darkest. And you're just going to add it right along there. And it's going to come down like we did on that side. Right along the diagonal is where it's going to be the darkest. Closer to this corner is where it's going to be darkest as well. Going back in and adding another layer because, like I said, it's layering. Now I'm going to turn and come this way. Starting in that corner with the darkest, coming from the diagonal. Coming along that corner, that edge of the square. Okay, so it's going to look kind of like that, and then we're going to blend it a little better. So that's how you're going to do this square, this square, this square, and this square. And the way that I did this is the way you're going to do this one, and this one. Now for the center, we're going to start the darkness in the middle and work our way from diagonal to diagonal down to about right there. Rotate it and do the same thing, keeping our lines the same direction we did before. Trying to make it about the same distance from the center on each of your sides. So now that you know how to finish this with just the dark, go ahead and do that. And I'm going to finish mine, and then we'll go back to blending it all together and making sure we have our, where it's supposed to be black, and and then we'll clean up and finish the project. So go ahead and work your way through each of the squares, adding your darkest parts. Now that we've finished adding in our block of our darkest value, or our closest to black, it should look something similar to this. Once that is done, it's time to blend our values together. So if you remember, in our first value lesson, we did the blocks of color where we had light, medium, dark. And then our second value lesson, we blended. So this is, we're going to blend now. So I'm going to start in this box right here. And so we have dark, medium, and light value. And I'm going to slowly start pulling this dark down, but I'm going to lighten it up as I go. So I'm not going to bear down as much on my pencil. And I'm going to slowly start that transition, that blending from that darker value into my medium value. And this is going to take a little bit of time because you want to take your time. And just slowly keep working your way down from that darker value out into your medium value. So now I've reached my medium value, and I might have to go back up and darken just a little bit in here. Slowly adding more graphite as I go until I get down here. Then I'm going to lighten a lot up right at my edges. You want those corners to be filled in. So now we have more of a blended value scale, and I'm going to darken it just a little bit up right at the edge and pull a little bit more of that darkness down just a little bit further, and just slowly start blending more. And I'm going to do that on each of my edges, where I'm just slowly blending that darker value into that medium. As I come down, it's going to be lighter and lighter value till I get towards the edge. Okay. So now we have in this square 2 of our sides done. We're going to come to this one, and we're going to do the same thing where we're just blending that value together, making the darkest meet the medium better, blending it together better, pulling it down into our lighter value. So just blending it along. Now this box is blended, and we're going to do that in each of our blocks. So in this one, I'm going to just slowly, it's okay if you make a mess like that, you can erase it. We're just going to slowly blend. But first, before I keep going, I'm going to get a paper towel, and I'm going to lay it over my artwork so I'm not smearing the graphite. So I'm going to come to this one again, and I'm just going to slowly start blending that darker value into a medium value. So all the way up to the edge right there, it's going to be more of a medium value. Pulling that medium value a little bit darker as I go along that diagonal and further down. Darkening it up. Blending it out. Blending it up towards that top edge. So if you see here, it's not going, my medium is not going all the way to the top. I'm going to leave that a lighter, very light, close to white. Blending, trying to make those colors, those values blend a little bit more. Then I'm going to rotate it and do the same on the other side, pulling that medium value in more. That's a little dark. That's okay. We can erase a little. We'll go back and erase more in just a minute. Once we start to blend each of our squares, we'll go back and do the erasing to blend it better, and then we'll add in our other lines to give it a more defined look and a more finished look. We're adding more of that medium value. Trying to keep it consistent with the other side. Pulling that medium value down a little further on that diagonal. Just giving it more of a blended value scale. So trying to make it consistent on both sides. Okay. So that's what those two blocks look like. And now for the center block, I'm going to do the same thing. We might need to darken this up just a little bit in that tip, that little point, pulling that darkness out a little bit more, lightening up our the weight of our pressure on our paper with our pencil, pulling that medium down, that medium dark, down into our medium, lightening it up a little bit as we get to the edge, adding a little bit more darkness in towards the point, pulling the darker value out of the center from angle to angle, or diagonal to diagonal. Slowly lightening up and relieving the pressure of our brush as we, pencil, as we pull it down into our lighter value. I'm going to rotate and do the same thing on all four sides and the last three sides of this one, trying to keep it in each of the tops of the triangles and slowly pulling that value down. And if you get a little dark, that's okay, because we still have to go in and erase the lighter parts out and blend a little bit better. Our eraser will help us blend a lot better once we get to that point. I'm going to come over here and darken up just a little bit more on this part. Come back over here and add just a little darkness to this side. And come to this one. Darken in the center again, right at that point, the tip of my triangle. And slowly pull that darkness out, finding the medium. And working our way out to the light. you might have to go back to each of the little sections in here to even it out a little bit more, and that's okay. You want to find that good consistency throughout each of the sections of this centerpiece. Slowly coming out again with that darkness, blending it down, fading down into the lighter pieces, lighter section. Okay. So now we've done 3 different parts of our optical illusion, and you see how much of an optical illusion we've already created. So I've shown you the center block, I've shown you one of these 4 blocks, and I've shown you the corner blocks. So go ahead now and take your time to finish the rest of your blending shading part, and then we'll go back and add all of the finishing touches and clean up all of our edges. Once you've finished your smoothing out shading, and it would look something like this. Now we're going to go in and we're going to take out the lighter parts, and we're going to add in the finer details where we have the lines and stuff. So what we're going to do first is we're going to take our ruler and we're going to trace over those lines. And if you have your paper towel, it's probably a good idea to lay it on top of your shading so that you're not smearing your shading. And we're going to trace out those lines that we had to begin with again. But what you're going to do, you're going to have it darker here in the corner, and as you get to the end, you want to lift up your pencil and make it lighter. So we're going to do a dark line to a faded into a lighter line. So we're just going to follow those lines from the center out and make it dark in the center and then fade it out. So see how it's darker here and then it gets lighter there. And you're going to trace all of your diagonal lines like that. So it's darker in the center and then it fades out as you get to the end. And this is kind of adding back in that black value and that dark line, so it looks like it's going into space instead of just being a smooth edge. So just starting in the center and then dark at the very center and out, and slowly lift up and make it lighter as you go out. And try to stay on top of that previous line. So see, now you've created the illusion of walking into that square. And we're going to do it on all of these diagonal lines. So you're going to start where it's the darkest and line your ruler up, and it's going to be dark through the darkness, and as you're going through your value, you're going to lighten up your pencil line. And you might have to go over it a couple times to make sure that you're getting it the right value as you go down. And if it's a little bit darker, that's okay. We just want our lines to stand out. So once you finish darkening all your lines back up, it really does look a lot more like an optical illusion. Now we're going to go in and we're going to start to finish those, like fix those little touches. So if you see right here where I drew my line, there's a little bit of white right along that. So I'm just going to come in and I'm just going to darken that up, just make my darkest part go right up to that line just a little bit more. And fill it in a little bit. So if you see that on any of your lines, just go in and just a little bit. If you think that you need a little bit more value now that you've added that line in, add a little bit more darkness. The center part might need to be darkened up just a little bit. Usually I'm a little light on my center part. So you might want to go back in and darken just a little bit. Bring your value out a little bit more. Because once you add those the blacker lines, those solid, thicker black lines, then you start to notice where you need a little bit more dark value. And, you know, that's okay because shading takes time. It's, like I said, layering, layering, layering. And if you need to, you know, add a little bit more on some of them, go ahead and do that now that you've got your lines in. Okay, so I'm just fixing all those little sections, putting a little bit more of my darkest value in there. So I'm matching those lines that I just added in, blending it out a little bit more to give that illusion more of an appearance. Because some of your squares might be a little light in areas, and you know, I mean, that's just part of learning and part of shading. Even when I'm drawing, you know, my own art, when I've been shading for a long time, I still go back and keep adding a little bit more, taking a little bit more away. So once you've added and you've kind of blended all that dark value in again, we're going to go in and clean it up. So the first step we're going to do is we're going to erase all of the stuff inside of these areas that are supposed to be all white. So how I do this, I take my ruler and I line it up with the outside lines. And you're going to erase those outside lines. That's why I said draw them lightly. You're just going to line your ruler up and take your eraser and just go along and erase that line. And then just erase any little marks that you may have in that section. And then gently wipe away your pencil eraser shavings. Be careful not to get your finger in the shading area. So now I have this line that's erased. Well, now that value that I added is really defined. So I'm going to take my eraser and I'm going to just slowly pick up just a little bit, even that line that I drew, that angled line, just slightly pick up a little bit across the whole thing, just to pick up a little bit of that value to blend it in a little bit better, all the way across, and then just lightly wipe it away. And I'm going to go to this, well, we'll erase that and get to that side in just a minute. Just do it on the side where you have erased the line. So see on this section right here, I've erased from where that line was, lightened it, and then slowly went into the darker value, erasing just a little bit as I went. I'm going to do the same thing with this part. Just slowly and erase a little bit of this, lighten that line up a little bit too at the end. And slowly just take out a little bit. And then just lightly wipe it away. You can always go back in and add a little bit more of that line if you want to. Do the same thing with this side. Just lightly blend it in with my eraser a little bit. Pulling up just a little bit of that value towards the end. Now I'm going to rotate it and I'm going to erase this line. So just take, oops, make sure your ruler is pressed down when you do this so that it doesn't move like mine just did. That way you're not erasing more than you want to erase. That happens sometimes. And then just slowly, carefully brush that away. Erase any pencil marks that are in that section because you want that to be nice, bright white. And then like we did on the other side, just go in lightly and erase just a little bit of that value. Just pick up a little bit of that to blend it in a little bit more. Erasing is just as important in shading as actually using your pencil. When I'm doing some of my bigger projects, I honestly erase probably more than I add pencil. That's just what I do and what I have found. Most of my drawing is done with my eraser. So that's just part of shading and adding your value, your highlights, your lowlights. Slowly take up some of that. Okay, so we're going to do this as we work our way around. I'm going to show you, so as we work our way around, we're going to do that, erasing all of these lines and erasing a little bit of that value. And be careful as you're touching it so you're not smearing your pencil mark. So now I'm going to erase this edge line all the way. And all of the lines, all the marks, all the smudges in that section, and gently wipe that away. And I'm not going to erase my value yet. I'm just going to go ahead and erase my lines first, and then I'll go back and do the rest of that. But that's what we're going to do. I just wanted to show you so you had an idea of why erasing this line that we drew in was important and why I said that it should be done lightly. When we're drawing our guidelines, they should always be light, because if we need to darken them, like we darkened these, we can. It's easier to erase a light mark than a dark mark. And I'm sure you've probably learned that as you've been creating your value and stuff in here. So now we're going to do all of our, so we've gotten all four of that square on the inside. Now we're going to do the same thing on the inside. And to do the inside, I put my ruler on top of my squares. And this one, you're not going to erase the line. You're going to put your ruler right on top of the line. And you're going to erase. It's kind of hard to tell. Just try your best to line it up right on top of your line. And then you're going to erase right along it. And you're going to push down and erase as much as you can to make a straight line. And you're going to erase those guide marks in the middle. But be careful not to erase too much when you don't have your ruler lined up. And if you don't get it all the way, do it again. That's okay. So see now, so we still have that line. We didn't erase our line. It's still there. But we've erased all of those marks on the outside of it. So you have a nice clean, crisp line. And you're going to do that to all of the inside lines. You're going to erase, you're going to put your ruler right on top of that line. So you're not erasing the line, you're erasing the stuff on the outside of the line. And just erase right across to make that nice, crisp line. And erase those inside lines and all of the smudges that may be in there. And then slowly, gently wipe that out. And there are eraser brushes where you can, there's a little brush that you can use that will wipe those marks away. Doing that helps. You might have to go back in, because see, I erased too much of this line right here. So if you do that, you might have to go back in and just, darken that line back up right there. And kind of put that line back. Okay. You're going to do that all the way around. Now this one, because it's the outside edge line, you are going to erase that line. So you can move it just a little bit so that you can erase that line. So the only ones that you don't really want to erase right now are those ones where the black is the darkest against. You want those to be nice, solid lines. And if you have to, you can go back and try it again. Okay, so I've gotten all that cleaned up, and I'll go clean up that in a minute. And just clean up that space really well. And do that for all of your edges. So I've done those edges. I need to come to this one and do these edges. And again, this one has the black edge, so you want your ruler lined up right on that line. And then take your eraser right across it. And go erasing all of that junk that's in there. Be careful wiping away your eraser trash. This way. And this one is that dark line, so you want to stay on top of that line and erase what's on the outside of it. And don't get too close to those other lines. Make sure your ruler is there to keep you from erasing into those squares. And just keep rotating around until you've gotten all of those spaces cleaned up, all those extra corners erased off. I think I have one more to go. No, I have two more to go. I think I've already done this one, but if it looks dirty again, so it might be, oops, I might have to go back and erase again. Just keep checking. And I think this is the last one. Okay, so I've erased all of those marks on the inside. I've brushed it away gently. Okay, now once all of those spaces are cleared up, we're going to slowly go in, and like we did on the first little bit, we're going to slowly start fading our lines, our corner lines, erasing a little bit of those. Just this line can be a little bit faded, a little bit erased more. This line can be a little erased. And we're just taking up a little bit of that value right along the edge. That dot in the corner where I had that big thick dot can be erased. This one can be erased. This line can be erased for the most part down that. Leaving a little faint hint of the line is okay, but for the most part erasing that whole line. So all the way around your paper, you're just going to gently erase just a little bit. Oops. And if you erase too much, you can go back in and add just a little bit more of your value back. Some of your lines may need to be erased quite a bit, but you want a faint little, because it is going to be lighter on the outside. So it's going to look like you're going into a hole where there's not really an edge. It's kind of the idea. Making sure I get rid of those dark points at the end of all of my corners. And lightly picking up some of your shading just to blend it in a little bit more. This line can be erased pretty much all the way because that's going to be your lightest part right there. Lifting up some of that value as you go in. This line can be pretty much erased all the way. Lifting up some of that value as you go in, leaving just a faint hint of that color. This one can be almost erased. I need to go back in and add a little bit because I erased a little too much. Creating that lighter line here where it's darker there. This one can be erased almost all the way. Just very lightly erasing it so you're not pulling out too much of that value. Picking up a little bit to make it more blended. Take out a little bit more of that line. This one can be just lightly erased. So you want those lines, except where it's the darkest, right there, to be just lightly erased. So they're just barely present on your drawing. Because you want the value, the very light value, to create that line and not the line itself. And then slowly just pull out those little highlights as you're going around the edges of your squares and filling back in if you need to add just a little bit more value. Pick up just a little where you need to. Need to add a little bit more in there. That one got erased quite a bit. I think I may have gotten all of them cleaned up. And be careful when you're rubbing across where you've erased. So now, once you've done all of that, you should have, I'm sorry, I'm trying to focus it. There you go. Now it's focused. You should have your optical illusion where it looks like you are walking into each of these little tunnels. So that is the end of this project. If you have any questions or concerns or comments, please send them to me and I will make sure that I reply as soon as I can, and I will help you in any way I can. I look forward to seeing your finished optical illusions, and I hope that you enjoyed creating this.